My full and correct name is Bruce Raymond, Raymond Sims. But when I was born, it was up to the doctor to send in the announcement of your birth to the vital statistics in Atlanta, Georgia. And Dr. Rice delivered me at home, and he submitted a record of my birth. And I went through my childhood thinking I was named after my father, who was Lee Raymond Sims. And my mother was Nana Rose Burroughs Sims. And we called her a Burl when we were poor. And if she had any money, it was Burrell. Many years later, when I had to obtain a birth certificate for enlistment in the Air Force, I was surprised to find I really wasn't Bruce Raymond Sims. Dr. Rice had spelled Raymond Ramon, so I am officially a Ramon. And that came in handy when I worked along the Texas-Mexico border, because there's no corresponding name in Spanish for Bruce, so I became known as Ramon. I was born in the very edge of Hiawassee on what is now Bell Street. A wonderful day for my mother, June the 29th, 1932, when I appeared on the scene. Bell Street runs along the square and over the little hill where the old schoolhouse was. And then just beyond the old schoolhouse, first house, was a house owned by my uncle, Jess Gibson. And that's the house I was born in.
All right, now I'm recording. Bruce Sims, June the 4th, telling me about where people used to live in Hiawassee. He used to live where the Georgia Mountain Restaurant is. Yeah. Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, how are you?
Okay.
And the house we lived in was moved from behind where McDonald's is now. Had to be moved up that steep bank, and it was all tilted on the rails and the wheels that they had under it to move it. And it looked like it could tilt over any minute. Mother was watching, and she couldn't stand to watch. She said, "Oh, it's going to turn over and shatter all pieces. I can't stand to watch it." So she went on back to where we were temporarily living, in the old high school dormitory. And then they finally made it up the bank and got it set up. Then when Dad decided to build a new house, they moved it again, and it's still out on Bell Creek.
7281? What's the first three?
Also, my Uncle Ernest Sims lived where Hardy's is now.
Okay.
They moved that house again, and it's out on the Bell Creek Road.
His name is Ernie?
Ernest, Ern for short.
Now, is that Roan's child?
No, he was a Sims. He was Uncle Pate Sims, his son.
Oh, okay.
And Pate was really named Lafayette. They shortened it to Pate.
Where did Fate live?
He lived in that old house that I showed you on Bell Creek.
Okay. And then your aunt used to live in where Hiawassee Realty used to be. I don't know what's there now. On the corner.
It's at the corner of the 76 Highway or Main Street and Sims Circle.
But you were telling me about the county agents. There were two.
There were two. Mrs. Holland's husband was one of them, and Mr. Neville was the other one. And I believe they were replaced by Nicholson, or Nick as we called him, and he was the one that was instrumental in getting the Georgia Fair started. We had a carnival that was really the beginning of the fair, and it was with a little circus. I believe it was Blackwood Brothers Circus, and they would set up on the elementary school behind the courthouse. And then it got too small for them and needed a place for more parking, so they moved to the high school grounds above where the bank of Hiawassee is now. And the Lions Club said, well, we will assist you by handling the parking. So that's how they got involved in it. And they had the exhibits of vegetables and all that, fresh vegetables, canned goods, all kinds of exhibits in the old gymnasium. And then they had a fiddlers convention in a tent set up above the gym. And later on, then, when the TVA property at the fairgrounds where it is now became available, they moved out to that property, and the Lions Club became the sponsor of it.
Well, you were also talking about Roan used to own the land in town on the side of the street where Daniels is. He used to live where Daniels' restaurant is up on the hill.
Yeah, he lived on that hillside. Actually, his barn was where Daniels' restaurant is, and then his house was to the side of it.
I never saw a house up there that I remember.
And looking back through the records, I found where Uncle Rome had given the city of Hiawassee 1 acre to build the courthouse on.
So the square up there, no?
The courthouse.
Oh, the present courthouse. Okay.
Well, the present courthouse is built over the side of the old courthouse. And
So he owned from Bell Creek all the way up through Hiawassee.
now there was a street there right in the edge of town. The old house on the Hazel Highway was the Birch place. He didn't own that. And there was a little stream that came down and crossed the road and went into the lake. And he owned the north side of that little stream all the way out to Bell Creek.
This is Rome Burrell.
Jerome, J-E-R-O-M, Jerome. I mean, everybody called him Uncle Rome, whether they were related or not because of his age. And I was slightly related. And the only person that ever called him anything else was Kaiser Dean, and he called him Jerry.
Well, what happened to Roan's house?
It stood there for many years. He had different relatives live with him. And the last one to live with him was one of his granddaughters, Evelyn Sims, who married a Strand. So they lived there with him and inherited the place. And when Evelyn died, her husband, Strand, wasn't interested in living up here by himself. And he sold it to Bruce Kimsey and Cecil Sanders Jr. in partners. And then they divided it up and sold the part where Daniels is, and Well, the house across from us was sold to Pine Alley first. Several families lived there afterwards, and Miss Isabel Hall was the last one to live there.
Now it's a real estate office.
And the mall was a 4-acre cornfield. Later it was elementary school. That was handy for Dad. All he had to do was just go across the street to school.
So your aunt lived at the corner, and your uncle lived up on the hill, or great-grandpa lived up on the hill, or
Great-great-uncle somewhere way on up there. And my grandmother lived next door where that little Wealth of Help shop is, right next door to us. And then our barn was on further out at the intersection of the Bell Creek Road, and our pasture was on out there. And let's see here, Mr. Ray Nicholson owned the pasture in between my mother's house and our house down on the little branch.
there weren't many people in town, were there?
No, the last house going west on 76 or north as it goes through town. Dad sold the property at what is now the funeral home.
Oh, okay.
He sold that. I forget the name of the guy that bought it, and then later on Clay Allen bought it, and he sold it to Abernathy. Frank Abernathy was a mortician, so he had the funeral home there until he died, and now it goes by another name.
Bannister.
Bannister Funeral Home.
And
Thank you.
and Annie Braun. Annie Braun's.
She is a Johnson. She was Annie Braun was her maiden name, and the Johnsons had a pasture there also. So that's where her house next to the funeral home is what was in the Johnson pasture.
Okay.
There are not many pictures of that time, or those houses that I know of. Of course, Jerry Taylor might know, but
Yeah, I think I've got a picture of my aunt's house. Maybe with background you can see it that way.
well, should I turn it off or you talked out?
Yeah, I wouldn't have talked this much if you hadn't turned it on and wanted me to.
Well, yes, we have to.
Your telephone, so I did all that, and I enjoyed that. It was a little better than security police work,
In the prison.
because in guarding the prisoners, they had lots of friends on the base, and you'd go out and give them their latrine break, and maybe a friend would leave them a cigarette or something, and then on a ledge or a windowsill or somewhere where they could reach it, and you just couldn't keep an eye on all of them all the time, you know. And when you got back to the stockade, they were frisked, and if they found any contraband, then it was your fault that you let them get it, so it wasn't good. But when I worked at base operations, and sergeant says one day, he said, "Pack your bags." He said, "We're moving back to Korea," and that was the third time I'd been to Korea. But we went set up a tent, but we chose a bad place. We chose it at the end of the taxiway, and there was a squadron of F-51s, it used to be P-51s, and I don't know what nation they belonged to. Might have been the Union of South Africa or somebody, because they had an eland painted on the side of the plane. That's the only way I knew who they were.
What's an eland?
It's an African animal, kind of like a deer,
Okay.
eland, and they would come and turn their tail right towards the tent. And it was summertime, and we had the sides of the tent rolled up, and they would run up their engine and just blow sand and dust and blow up papers and all. It was just a bad place. So then we moved to the far side of the runway, and we had two sections, operations sections. Over there, I kept up with the aircrew flying time. They have a Form 1, which they keep up with and turn in at the end of the flight. And then I transferred it on to a Form 5, which was their permanent record of their flying time. And that's about all I had to do over there.
In Korea.
Yeah.
Well, where did you give out maps and all that stuff?
That was in Japan.
Oh, okay.
The air base there was called Suiki. It's spelled T-S-U-I-K-I, Suiki. And it had been closed since World War II. And then we reopened it for the Korean War. And we had a stockade which we could keep 6 or 8 people in, but we only had maybe 4 at the most, usually maybe just 2.
At Suiki.
Mm-hmm. And if they were given longer sentences, like more than 6 months, they were shipped off to a federal prison. But if it was maybe 30 days or something like that, they did it in the local stockade. And the stockade had been used as a stockade by the Japanese. And when we moved in there, it was one of the only buildings that looked like it hadn't been damaged. So we had 4 prisoners, and they got a weekly inspection by one of the base doctors. And one of the guys was doing a 60-day sentence, and he had done 30 days, and he came up with a dose of venereal disease. We wondered, how can that happen? The man's been in the stockade for 30 days. And that incubation period is maybe 3 days to 7 days. So how in the world did it happen? So it was a mystery there for a while, but we finally found out that the bars were set in a cement casing in the side of the building, and the whole window would slide out of the wall. It was pretty heavy, and it took cooperation among them to do it, but they could just take the whole window right out of the wall. So they had decided that, we did our change of shift at midnight. We'd take their flashlight and make sure everybody was in their bunk. But then they weren't checked again until 6 o'clock in the morning. So they had 6 hours there, and they had decided, one at a time they would take turns sneaking out at night between 12 and 6. And I don't know how long it had gone on, but if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have known anything was going on. But one of them finally confessed that that's what they were doing. So I was glad to get away from that job. Been in Korea about a month, and our other section in operations had flyer dropping missions. We had a couple of C-47 cargo aircraft, and one of them was converted into a flyer flare dropper.
Like flour you make bread with?
No, flare, F-L-A-R-E.
Oh, flare. Okay.
The front line. So if they call for lighting on the front line, if they were attacking at night or something, and then we were up there, and the whole C-47 could stay up hours all night long, really. And then they would go to the proper place and drop the flares. So I decided I wanted to go on one of the flare dropping missions just to see what it was like, even though that wasn't my job. It was part of the cargo handler's job. So I asked their NCO, tech sergeant there. He said, yeah, he could arrange it that I could go on one of the flare dropping missions. But before that came about, I was sitting in my desk one day and somebody come by and slapped me on the back. And it was one of the guys from my squadron. They had asked for another volunteer, and he volunteered. And he couldn't type a lick, so he was no use to me in the office. So they put him in back with the cargo crew, and that was a mistake. He wasn't there to work; he was there to talk. He and that sergeant, they argued about politics, religion, or anything that could never be solved. And it was hot back in the cargo tent, and they would come up front where we had the sides of the tent rolled up to do their arguing. And my sergeant would say, don't you guys have anything to do? And they would go back. A few minutes later, here they'd come back again. So he wasn't working out. And we just called him Frenchy. He was a Louisiana Frenchman. And the day I was supposed to go on the fire dropping mission that night, our cargo plane, which had a flag, and we called it, its tail number ended in 48, so we called it 048. At the end of the day, we were going around the end of the runway to get back to the dining area and the sleeping quarters. I looked up and I saw 48, and I knocked on the cab of the truck. I said 48 is in the landing pattern. And my sergeant, he said, well, we better go back and unload the plane. And that was the duty of the cargo handlers. He said, told the driver to turn around and take them back. He said he was going to stay with the cargo handlers. And he asked me if I was going to stay, and I said, no, they didn't need me. I'd just stay with the truck. And Frenchy was a cargo handler. That was part of his job. But he didn't stay with them either. He stayed on the truck. We went on back to the mess hall and just eating and laying on the cot. And the sergeant came in and he says he was mad, red in the face, because you hadn't helped out. And he says, 048 is going back to Japan in an hour. He said, both of you be on it. So that ended my temporary duty with the operations. And that was the third time I was in Korea, and then the fourth time we went, the whole unit went to Kimpo Air Base, which is about 14 miles from Seoul, and it's a paved road goes from the air base out into Seoul, which is, there's very few paved roads over there. And part of my duties there was working with an Army MP and patrolling that 14 miles of paved road, because there were so many accidents out there. People coming off of them old muddy, dirty, ruddy roads would get onto that 14 miles of paved road, and they wanted to see what them vehicles would do, and they were just having accidents right and left until we went out there and started patrolling. That was pretty good duty. And I was a 3-stripe sergeant at that time, and that was a very good rank. And when we came back from Korea, the Air Force had been an independent service since 1947. but they didn't get the blue uniforms until we came back from Korea. And when we used the Army uniforms, we were called the Brown Shoe Air Force because we didn't have the black shoes yet. And when we came back from Korea, we went to Hachikawa Air Base in Japan to the gymnasium. They took all of our clothing, gave us a physical inspection, issued new Air Force blues, and changed our rank from sergeant to airman first class, which was almost airman no class because that was no longer a good rank. You didn't get the benefits of the NCO club and all that we got as a sergeant. But I stayed on active duty 10 years as an enlisted man. When I got out, used my GI Bill to go down to Florida State. And then after I got a degree, then I was eligible to get a commission. And I stayed in the reserve 25 more years, gave me a total of 35 years military service, and retired as a lieutenant colonel. The end.
Okay. Now, well, I'm going to tell the story then. Boach was giving haircuts for 25 cents. Then he finally went up to $1, but everybody else and everywhere was charging $6. And
Boach was still charging only $1. And someone asked him, said, Boach, why haven't you gone up on your haircuts? And he said, well, he said, I don't need to charge more than $1 because I made a living at it.
And you probably got the last haircut.
Yes, I went by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he didn't usually leave till 4:30 or 5, so I went by in plenty of time, but he was just fixing to close his door, and he said, I was just leaving, but come on in. He said, I'll go ahead and cut your hair. And he did, and the next day he went to the nursing home, so I believe I got the last haircut he ever gave.
Closed up one day, and then he was in the nursing home the next day. Well, did he, you don't know if he checked himself in or not.
Yes, he did. He checked himself in. And he'd been in there some little while, and I went by the nursing home to visit with Tom Mathis. And Tom was bedridden and was so gaunt I hardly recognized him, but he still was mentally alert. And I said, Tom, do they ever get you out of bed and let you exercise? He said, no, they never do. So I called the attendant. I said, let's get Tom out of bed. And we put him in a wheelchair, and I rolled him down the hall and out to the lobby, and Boach Kimsey was sitting in the lobby. And I thought he and Boach were long-time acquaintances and good friends, and that he might want to sit and talk to him. But he didn't. The minute the light hit his eyes, he says, it's too bright, it's too bright. Take me back to my room. So I took Tom back, and that's the last time I ever saw him alive.
Now, was this at the nursing home over the hospital?
Yes, above the hospital.
Yeah, my great-grandma was there, Rosini.
And finally, I have old man. Look at that old man. See the one with the gray hair? How he kind of shuffles along, tiny steps, shoulders slumped. He can't be very strong. I wonder just how old he is. I wonder what he does all day. He must not have a family, for he spends a lot of time at the local cafe. Have you ever said more than, hello, how are you today? Not waiting for his answer, not really caring what he would say. He notices those things. He usually sits alone with his private thoughts, but stops to visit, and his squinted eyes grow bright. For the first time, you see they are blue. Then he tells you his tales. Could they really be true? He will tell you where he has been. He will tell you what he has seen. His body is a wreck, but his mind is keen. After a while, he shuffles along. He stops for his mail on the way home. He intends to sit in his recliner and watch some TV, but he passes a mirror, and what does he see? To his surprise, the reflection is me. Until the next time, take care of yourselves and each other.